stayed all 3 days. So it's been a long process to get to this point. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank my leadership group: Brandon Brown, Tim McDonald, Dennis Hickey, Chris Rossetti, Ryan Cowden, along with all the coaches. There's a lot of hard work that goes into this. They're sent on out to pro days and Zooms with the prospects, and Dave is nice enough to give them a week off in late March, and unfortunately sometimes there's pro days during that time, and these coaches have to give up vacation with their family for to go visit with these draft prospects and help us in our process to make the decisions and draft these kids. So hats off to the personnel staff, the coaching staff, everybody in this building that is part of the process. So there's a lot that goes into it, and I like where we ended up this weekend. Now that it's all said and done, we still have free agency, and they're up there working on that now. But I feel like we're in a good spot in the draft. Any questions?
Obviously the roster isn't finalized, but just now that you are through the draft and the bulk of free agency, how do you feel about where this roster stands going into year 3 for you guys?
Yeah, I think where we are right now, coming into the off season, between what we did in free agency, the draft today, the trade for Brian Burns. Again, we always have room to grow and always have room to improve. And I say it all the time here, we don't play until September. So there's still time between now and September where we can acquire other players, the final cut down, whatever it may be. So I like the group that we have right now. I'm excited to get the rookies in here, assimilate them into our culture, get on the grass, practice, and then as we observe and evaluate the players as we're going through it, if we still have needs, there will probably be some vets that will be released over the next couple of weeks as well. So there's always going to be a time and a place where you can pounce on some more players, but we'll see where we are right now, and as we go through the competition period and during training camp, if there's other areas we need to fill, we'll try to do that.
Joe, was tight end more of a priority because you don't know what's going to happen with Darren?
Yeah, we had to take that into account for sure, but Theo was the top player on our board. Again, I'm trying to think if there were any of these guys that we took that weren't the top player on the board at the time. We went by the board. He's the guy that last night when we left, he was sticking out for us, and you're always thinking when you come in the next morning, he's going to go sooner, he may not be there, and we were excited to get Theo.
You obviously did not pick a quarterback in this draft. You did a lot of work before the draft was reported. You tried to move up, or at least had conversations about moving up for a quarterback in this draft. Where do you consider yourself with the quarterback position now for this year and for the future?
Yeah, for me, I said it in January after the season that expectation was Daniel would be our starter, and we brought Drew Lock in to be his backup, and Tommy's been the backup. So that's where we are, and that's where we're going to move forward this season. Daniel's still on contract for 3 more years. So as it sits today, that's where we are.
Joe, while you were doing all of that work and going to places like Washington, LSU, North Carolina, was the design during that time to try to make sure you were coming out of this draft with a young developmental quarterback? Or did you view it as due diligence that wasn't necessarily going to come to fruition?
Yeah, and I understand your question. If you look at the pro days we went to, there's quality and quantity. LSU, there's a lot of good players at other positions that we did take. No different than Washington. Washington won a lot of games, went to the national championship game, and there were a lot of players. So
I guess I should throw in the Drake May and JJ private workouts as well into the work you did.
Question in regards to the private
No,
workouts?
just into all the work you did. I mean, I should have mentioned those in the
Yeah,
context.
there's I can name 15 other players that we did private workouts at other positions. So again, we're going to continue to do our due diligence. You get 6, 7 swings, and you want to make sure you know as much as you can about each prospect. And I think being around these kids on their campus, boots on the ground, dinner, setting up pro days, whatever it may be, I think you can find a lot out about the prospects. So it's not just quarterbacks that we did private workouts with. We're always going to do our due diligence across the board.
I think the due diligence on quarterbacks, just based on where you're picking, led to some maybe doubt about your faith in Daniel. Obviously, you signed a big deal last year. So I think people maybe would take that as you're looking to move off him. So do you like recommit to him or anything? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've said it before, it's not just right now. I mean, Dave and I went through this in 2017, and we've got intimate knowledge of that class, whether it was Lamar Jackson, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Mason Rudolph. I mean, you can go through it, we know those guys, we have a very good feel. Last year's draft, we spent time with CJ Stroud, we spent time with Will Levis, like, now we know what these kids are about, if they ever become free agents or they're on the trade market. I just think it's a different position when you're evaluating it. You can watch all the film you want, but there's reasons at that position guys succeed and they fail, and it's not just because of the tape. So that's always good. I mean, the 3 years we've been here, we've done a lot of work on the quarterbacks. Maybe it hasn't been as public, it hasn't been as well covered, but we'll always do that just because of the importance of the position and what goes into it. You can't just throw the tape on and say, okay, I'll sign that guy. There's a personal makeup, there's a way you carry yourself, leadership, processing information. It's not easy. This guy calls a play in some of these meetings and says regurgitate it to me, and then you gotta go call out the mic, and then you gotta change the play. You gotta shift this guy. Oh, by the way, you gotta snap the ball, and you gotta figure out where you're throwing it to. That's not easy. So I think spending time with this position is very, very important. Again, whether it's today or down the road or in the future.
Dave, have you spoken directly to Daniel to maybe share with him some of what Joe just said, or to ask him if he has questions? You know, have you done anything out of the norm because of this situation with Daniel?
No, I think, look, I talk to the entire team, but I meet with the quarterbacks daily. I spend a lot of time with them every day. So, you know, you're just transparent with the entire team about the whole draft process. You're trying to improve your team. You know, the last meeting we had, I showed a picture up here of all of our area scouts, Joe, his leadership group that he mentioned, and you know, part of their role is to help improve our football team by creating competition. And then there's a human element too. You know, if you're sitting in there and you're in the receiver room and we draft Malik Nabers, there's a human element to that too. So I think you have to be transparent. There's a draft every year. There's free agency every year. You know, we start out the meeting by, you know, any new players that are here that weren't here last year, stand up. Any guys that were drafted by Joe and their staff, stand up. You know, it's different every year. The teams are different. It's constructed different. But I think that open lines of communication, whether it's with DJ, whether it's with Tommy, whether it's with the receivers, the D linemen, linebackers, running backs. You know, I encourage all of our coaches to do that because I think that's important, to be transparent. You know, whether it's again free agency, draft, there's constant turnover, but so the communication lines are definitely very important.
Joe, I think last night, actually the first night we were talking about Nabers, the idea was presented to you, the idea that you were giving Daniel a weapon, and it seemed like it was almost like, oh, it's a weapon for the offense. Is there a sense where you're now trying to build what you want from your offense and what you want from your defense? It's not necessarily a specific player, but it's also kind of what you believe now you want to have as far as what you're gonna do offensively?
Yeah, and I think.
Well, I think you want generators.
Generators?
Yeah, people that can do stuff with the ball in their hand, whether that's take a jet sweep, go 30 yards, or whether that's, you know, run a double move and catch it 50 yards down the field to help you score points. You know, just to go back to Malik, I feel that he is that. Now he's got a lot of work to do. You know, there's a big playbook to learn, and you got to try to slow it down for these young players when they get in. But anyone that can touch the ball, and they're, you know, linemen can be generators too. You know, in a different way, by keeping the pocket clean, by getting movement at the line of scrimmage. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily this is the, you gotta wait to see what you have. And then try to move the pieces around and see where Theo, right? Theo, I'm saying his name right. That sounded wrong when I said it. Where he fits in, where Malik fits in, there's different positions to play. There's 5 eligible players on every play, and you try to use those guys the best you can, but they gotta come in here and prove it and, you know, earn the right to play.
Where does Tyrone Tracy fit into that kind of mold? And he's going to be 25 in November.
Yeah, I'd say some of these guys are older too, relative to, you know, kind of what people have been through the last few years. I would say COVID and all those other things. So some guys are a little bit older, but know, he's a former receiver, had a bunch of, you know, in terms of yards per carry, he's been pretty good. You know, he's an athlete that played receiver and then played running back, has some good production. We'll throw him in the mix, and you know, whether that's in the kickoff return game or whether that's at running back, whether it's the receiving part of it, you know, we got to do a good job of getting him here and seeing where he's at, and then trying to fit him into the things that, you know, he can do well.
So how do you feel, this is sort of like the last major, you know, portion of the offseason where usually there's major additions, so for the most part, I assume you're probably not gonna have much more to add. You put resources into the offensive line in free agency, a lot of them. You added Malik, you added Theo. How do you feel about the offense now?
Yeah, I think, again, what Dave said earlier, once we get out in the field and see how the pieces work together, I think we'll have a better feel. Dave's is one of the better ones I've been around. Like, it's not his system. Like, we're gonna run this, and it's square peg. We got ground hole. Like, we're gonna go out there. We're gonna see what routes these guys run well, what they can do. There are some new pieces. What do they do best, and then how can we accentuate that? How can we get them in positions where they can perform their best? So I like some of the pieces we have. I like some of the upgrades. You know, again, you can throw Brian Burns in the draft, you know, as well. Just, you know, that pick 39 to bring on a 25-year-old two-time Pro Bowler as a pass rusher as part of this draft class. So I like some of the moves that we made in the offseason. We still have work to do, and I just think it's year 3, and we're just going to continue to building the roster and the team. And I think where we are with some of the contract status, like I talked about last night, that you can keep a core group together, you know, over a 2 to 3 year window, and you have another offseason and another draft, and then you know, you look up and there's some really good pieces on the team.
Are you guys going to add a quarterback in as an undrafted free agent? Do you intend to?
Well, what I'd say is we'll have, you know, for rookie camp here in 2 weeks, Pat, we'll have a number of players come in. You know, you need to bring in a quarterback to go ahead and to operate some 7-on-7 things that you want to do. So, you know, we'll bring someone in, whether that's tryout, whatever it may be, and then we'll go from there.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, could you do one quickie on the kid from UCLA, what you see in him?
Yeah, he's a good football player. He was actually with Gobi, our special teams coach. They crossed paths out at Hawaii, so 440 career tackles, hasn't missed a game, smart, tough, dependable, instinctive. Our special teams coach, again, he's coaching him, so you know, has a vision for him on special teams. He was at the East-West, and I would say Tyrone, Tracy was too. So having our coaches, and then Shay at the Senior Bowl with Theo. So I think there is a little bit of a competitive advantage in terms of going back to Dave's staff and their ability or their willingness to sacrifice their time to help us in this process. And I would say all 3 of those guys that we took today, our coaches had intimate knowledge of those guys from the All-Star game. So we're excited about Darius, and he's a good football player. He's a good football player.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.